On Sunday, the 12th of October, Michael Daly and his dad, John, were killed in Michael's Beechcraft King Air C-90 in an apparent loss of control while on a local proficiency training flight out of Alliance Airport, Fort Worth, Texas. Here's what we know so far. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the BLANCOLIRIO channel. This video is brought to you by the folks that sponsor this channel here on Patreon. Starting first with the Aviation Safety Network, Sunday, 12 October, 1:30 in the afternoon local time, Beech C-90 King Air, a 1977 model, 2 fatalities, 2 occupants. Accident occurred 3 kilometers north of Hicks Airfield, Fort Worth, Texas. The departure airport was Fort Worth Alliance, where Michael's based out of. A Beechcraft C-90 King Air November 291 Charlie Charlie was destroyed when it collided with multiple parked trucks and terrain near the Hicks Airfield. The aircraft was approaching runway 14 at Hicks. ADS-B data shows the aircraft entered a sudden left turn with an increased descent rate until it impacted terrain. The weather at the time of the accident was fine, with winds out of the south. The 1977 C-90 Beechcraft King Air is a high-performance twin-engine turboprop aircraft, this one equipped with the Blackhawk engine conversions, giving him his stock horsepower up to a higher cruise altitude. Looking at the ADS-B data, it looks like this was a local proficiency flight or training flight with Michael and his dad out of the Fort Worth Alliance Airport. The accident occurred just north of the Hicks Airfield. There's a bit of confusion. Was Mike actually attempting an approach into Hicks Airfield, or was he just notifying Hicks Airfield traffic that he was in the area en route to Alliance? Here's the location of the 2 airports, Fort Worth Alliance, Hicks Airfield, all operating underneath the shelf of the Class Bravo airspace for Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. Hicks Airport runway 14, which Michael reported on Final 4, is 3,740 feet long. Here's a clip of what that final radio call sounded like from live ATC.
Report traffic, near C-91 Charlie Charlie, 5-mile final, 414. Not ready for it.
It's hard to make out what Michael is saying on that radio call. I heard a 5-mile final, runway 14. The runway at Hicks is runway 14. The runway over here at Alliance would be runway 16. He's in line with runway 14 at Hicks. Was he attempting to do a landing at Hicks on the shorter runway where he normally operates out of Alliance with its 11,000-foot runway? Looking at the rest of the ADS-B data, we can see he's doing a number of turns, staying relatively low altitude, and at some points getting some pretty slow ground speeds, 115, 116 knots. Was he practicing some engine out work with his dad in the aircraft, or just practicing some slow flight in the King Air? We just don't know at this time. Looking at the same data here on FlightAware, you can see the fluctuations in altitudes shown in green and ground speeds shown in yellow. If we take a look at the track log for that flight, we have ground speeds in miles per hour in this column, going from up to 232 miles per hour all the way down to 133 miles per hour right in here. 115 miles per hour. Where did I see that? Right back here. 113 miles an hour, 116 miles an hour. Definitely practicing some slower flight in the King Air. And then the last couple of data points, we got 123 mile an hour ground speed at 1,300 feet, 938 foot per minute rate of descent. And then the final data point, 109 miles an hour at 1,000 feet with a descent rate of 1,300 feet per minute. Looking at the previous flight history, it looks like Michael's flying fairly regularly in the King Air, usually going different places. So it's usually a cross-country flight to a full stop. With all of these flights coming back to Alliance Fort Worth, I don't see anything in the flight history to Tango 67 or the Hicks Airfield, at least in his recent flight history. Hicks Airport's a small airport, 3,700-foot long runway with a narrow taxiway. Not even sure if the King Air can taxi with its wingspan down this small taxiway at the Hicks Airfield if he was intending to land there. He could certainly do a 180 on the runway, though it'd be a tight fit at only 60 feet wide to get it turned around if he was going into that Hicks airfield. The point of impact was just to the north of Hicks airfield here in this parking lot here where all these trucks are located. With the crash site being here just to the north of Hicks Field, his hometown airport, Alliance, is located over here to his east, just a few miles. So was he setting up to re-enter a right downwind for runway 34? There are numerous gratuitous security camera videos out there on social media showing the impact here in the parking lot where the trucks are. And we don't need to show that, but this freeze frame from that video shows that all four corners of the aircraft are still attached. In other words, the King Air is in one piece prior to impact. And just a quick look at these two engines appears that both engines are running, though the NTSB will have to carefully go through the wreckage to see if there was anything wrong with the aircraft prior to impact. There was apparently no Mayday call from the pilots. So it appears to me, in my opinion, that this was a loss of control of the aircraft, resulting in what appears to be a stall spin accident. So investigators will be looking at the plane, the pilot, and the weather. The weather was fine the day of the accident. The aircraft, it will take investigators quite a bit of time to comb through the wreckage of the aircraft to see if there was anything wrong. Michael did have some flat panel avionics that may reveal some of the performance of the aircraft prior to the accident. But they'll be looking very closely at the pilot. And the pilot left behind a pretty good video here on Flying Doodles explaining his history with this particular aircraft.
Hi there, my name is Michael Daly. This is my King Air C-90 1977 model. I grew up, my dad had a Cherokee 180. We went all around the country, just to grandma's house, to business trips, and I had two other siblings, and so a family of five and a Cherokee 180 was an adventure. I wasn't crazy about flying at that point until I became a teenager and I decided to start training in 1996. Then I got busy with family and work and got married, had kids, and didn't really have the time or money for it until about 2015. I decided to pick up a hobby and decided to buy a Bonanza, which was a B-36 TC, which was a great airplane. That's the extended wing airplane. It's turbocharged from the factory, cruises about 180 knots, but it wasn't ficky and it wasn't pressurized. So my main mission was to go skiing. I love going skiing in Vail and Telluride, and so that's what I did with my airplane. I would go to Telluride.
Ficky meaning known icing conditions, as he wants to go to these various ski resorts.
In Vail and then also business trips. I ended up getting a Malibu in 2018. And it was great when my kids were small. So with a 1,250-pound useful load, I could put them all in there and get enough fuel also in there to go 800 nautical miles, no problem, which was my typical mission. As my kids got older, our weight as a family was approaching 900 to 1,000 pounds with baggage. And in the Malibu, that just didn't cut it. So that's when I decided to go with the C-90, 4,000 pounds of useful load because of the upgraded engines. I got the Blackhawk engines, which same horsepower, but you get that horsepower up a lot higher. You don't really notice the two engines. It's just, you're controlling both of the throttles with one hand, so it feels like one engine. Now you need to always go through that extra training to be prepared for losing an engine and what that involves. But other than that, it's just a real comfort to have that extra engine. Insurance required me to have 25 hours of dual and then a certified course. I went with executive down in the Austin area, which I really like them. Their price point is great and they're flexible. It really wasn't complicated at all. Really, the step up to the Malibu required the same thing. I also had to have 25 hours of dual, and like I said, the airplane's easier to fly, I feel, than the Malibu. The maintenance cost is, I would say it's about 4 times as much. And then of course You got higher insurance, higher hangar here at Alliance. So the cost is a big factor.
So it sounds like Michael has owned the King Air for a year and a half. And this is the kind of typical pilot profile that represents a considerable challenge to the industry. A private pilot moving up quickly through the ranks into high performance aircraft like the King Air with minimal training, 25 hours of training. And on this particular last flight with his dad, John, who is a Cherokee 180 pilot, neither of them are instructors in this aircraft. Are they out there doing stalls and falls and single engine work with this minimum amount of training in the aircraft and experience in the aircraft? When you come up through the ranks this quickly into the high performance aircraft, one of the big holes in your training education is upset recovery training. This is something, if you're military trained, you do this from day one. You spend your time doing aerobatic stalls and spins all day long, every day. And this is something that is missed by these higher performance aircraft rated pilots and is a big hole in our safety culture at this time. And finally, I just want to leave you with this. If you've got this kind of economic capability, why not just leave it to the pros? Why not just rent the FlexJet, buy the ride on, and leave it to the pros to fly you and your family safely across the country and save a lot of money and expense of trying to operate these older, expensive, complicated aircraft with a minimal amount of training. He leaves behind a beautiful family. This is a challenge to the industry, this sort of pilot profile. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.